Hi, if you're new to this channel, my name is Frank Dupree, and as you can see, I'm talking about living in the last days. Now, I've got a really serious message to be talking to you about today. It is about the drought that is affecting more than 1/3 of the United States and about the diesel shortage that is here now, and it's going to get worse. We're in May right now as I'm making this video, May 17th, 2022, and there's so much going on right now. It's a serious video, but I'm going to try to make it as easy to get along with as possible so that you can follow along and see what's going on, so you can be prepared. If we're not ready for what's coming down the pike, we are going to be decimated. You need to learn how to survive in the last days, and that's why I do these videos, living in the last days. Okay, so don't forget, hit the like button, and also if you're not subscribed, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. If you are subscribed and you haven't hit the notification bell, please do that. It helps with the algorithm that YouTube uses to get these videos up in front of people, and that'll help us out a lot. Okay, let's go right over to it. Living in the last days. We're talking about drought and the diesel shortage. And that. So tonight, the main question that I've got is America under judgment? Okay? So again, if you're new to the channel here, I'm Frank Dupree, and we're talking about living in the last days. So, is America under judgment? Well, you know, as I'm going to just give you a little bit of stuff. I'm not blowing my own horn, but I just want to tell you a little bit. I personally know hundreds of ministers, apostles, prophets, pastors, teachers, evangelists across the nation, and some of them internationally. I've been a part of networking with ministers for over 35 years, and I've been the secretary of two different organizations. I founded Metro Apostolic Network. I've been a part of, a couple of other ones where I've been board members. I'm one of the original members of the International Coalition of Apostles, which was started back in 2000 by C. Peter Wagner and John Kelly, Naomi Dowdy in Singapore, and several others. And so I've been a member of that. I was a member of that for many years. And also I was one of the basic founders of the United States Coalition of Apostolic Leaders back about 6 or 7 years ago with the Apostle Bishop Joe Matera, good friend of mine. And I know a lot of the ministers personally by fellowshipping and having meetings together and doing things together over the years. So one of the things that I know is that none of them would say America's under judgment as far as I know. The last I've talked to anybody in any meetings, any gatherings, any places like that, I haven't heard anybody saying America's under judgment. But I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to say America is under judgment. Now, you might feel like maybe it's not, this and that. I saw Andy said, maybe a warning, but not under judgment. But I want you to know that there are things that are letting us know that there is judgment here, and America has been past warning. The great book, The Harbinger, was out years ago, and now The Harbinger 2 is out. Now the movie is out, and he feels that there's signs in the Bible talking about the judgment that came upon Israel and how that judgment is also coming upon America, and what exactly part it's in, I'm not exactly sure, but I believe America is under judgment. I think it started with 9/11. I think that was the big warning. But then as the years went by, it just has gotten worse. And I'm going to bring up a few things tonight and let you know why I feel this way. Okay? This is important. And, remember, you've got to you cannot look at America as, from a political standpoint, from a Christian view, something like that. You've got to look at it from the Bible standpoint. What does the Bible say about judgment? What does the Bible say about certain things? And I'll tell you, there are certain things the Bible tells us about judgment. I'm going to shut my phone down here. That you cannot escape some of the things that are signs are pointing that we are under judgment of God. Now, the judgment of God is not the wrath of God. That's a whole different thing. That's not coming for a while. That's coming to the world. That's coming to unbelievers. That's in the times of the Antichrist and things like that. We're not in that time. So we're not under wrath, but under judgment. All right? And judgment simply means that God is saying, enough is enough, get it together, or things are going to get worse. Now, we have to have judgment ourselves. We have to discern good from evil, right from wrong. We have to discern what we're going to eat, what we're going to do, where we're going to go. Who do we fellowship? What church do we go to? These are all judgment calls, okay? And once you make a judgment call, you are putting something under your judgment. You have discerned a certain way, and now you're believing this is under my judgment. I say this and that, and that's what I'm saying right now. I believe America is under judgment. And you know what's happening here is you're saying judgment will come on Judgment Day. That's I can understand why you're saying that, but hear me out, listen to me, and see what I'm saying. And then everybody's entitled to their opinions and what they feel and think. But that is not judgment. Does not come on Judgment Day. That's a man-made idea. God has sent judgment to Israel a number of times before it was Judgment Day. And God has sent judgment to many other countries, Babylon, Syria, Iran, Iraq, back in the Old Testament times, and talk about also, besides today, in certain areas. So let's go into this a little bit, okay? We are in a situation, God says, if I withhold the rain, because I'm bringing judgment to a nation, he says, if I withhold the rain, that should be a sign to you that I'm bringing your country or your nation under judgment. America, 1/3 of America, let me put this slide up for you, and I've used this once before. Some of you might remember this. This is a map of America, and you can see the red areas and the blue areas. The red areas are the areas, and that's half of the nation. It's under drought. That's a drought, and America has been in a drought for 20 years. It's called a mega drought. Okay? Why we get the bird flip there yet? I don't know. But anyway, let's go right back to here. So we are in a mega drought. Every year we're hearing about wildfires devastating California, devastating our western states, and the drought is not a minor problem. It is a major problem here. And again, it's a 20-year drought. This has been going on 2 decades, since 2001. Does that ring a bell with 9/11? I think it should. So if God sends a warning in 2001, and he sends the beginning of a drought that should get your attention, and it goes on for a year, 2 or 3, well, that's one thing. But if it goes on for 5, for 10, for 15, for 20 years, we are in what they call a mega drought. And there's a lot of reasoning why. Scientists will tell you this and others will tell you that, but I'm going to tell you it's God's judgment. God is withholding the rain. He says it to Solomon. He says it in other prophets. He says, tell them, if I withhold the rain, they need to return back to me. Now, America, returning back to God is a difficult thing to think about, because America is not Israel. We have covenant aspects in America as a founding nation, as the founders of our nation looked towards God. Many of them said, without God, we won't make it. We need God. America is built on Judeo-Christian principles and values from the Bible. And without that, America falls apart. I believe President Ronald Reagan, the late President Ronald Reagan, said, if America stops to being a nation under God, it will become a nation going under. And this is what's going on in our nation right now. We're going under. Let's take a look at this picture right here, okay? This is Lake Mead. This is the Hoover Dam, and that's Lake Mead coming up into there, bringing the water in there. And this is when it was full. This is over 20 years ago. Lake Mead was full. The Hoover Dam was full, flourishing, producing electricity, hydroelectric power, and all that was going on. Let's take a look at Lake Mead today. This is, whoops, wrong guy. Here we go. Lake Mead full and Lake Mead today. You can see on here, if you can see it on your screen, it says historic high water level. This is the residue from where the water has gone down 40, 50 feet here over the last 20 years. We are at a historic low in Lake Mead. There's another great lake in this Colorado River area and all that makes a big difference for everything. This is Lake Powell, and this is Lake Powell Low, and you can see again the whiting on the sides of the cliffs where the water used to be up to the top of the dam, and now it's way, way down below. Now this is the problem that we have with this situation, okay? The problem we have with this situation is this, is that if the water goes another 10 or 20 feet lower, which it is on its way to doing, all the forecasts for this year are continued drought. It's not ending. In fact, last winter, there was not enough snow in the Rocky Mountains, which feeds the Colorado River, which feeds Lake Powell, which feeds Lake Mead, which powers the Hoover Dam and the other dams along the whole system there. And that system generates electricity for over, for 5 to 7 states. Okay, they are all dependent on that system for electricity. That's where they get most of their power. And the problem that we have is that once the warning goes out that they cannot generate the power that they used to, that means that you get serious problems on the electrical grid. Now, you already know last year in California, they had rolling blackouts, okay? Rolling blackouts. California right now is under drought watch and drought warnings. Utah, Arizona, other states, New Mexico, other states, they are under drought warnings, some of them under other severe things. You can only water things outside, water your grass, water your plants 1 time a week in certain states, twice a week in other states. That will change as the water gets lower and as the hydroelectricity ability of the dam gets lower and lower, and they create less electric. This is what's going on in the nation over here. And this is why I believe this is the beginning of America being under judgment. Because once you have less water, which there is right now, you have less ability to have water for crops and water for animals. And when you have less water for crops, you necessarily will end up with less animals because you cannot supply the food and you cannot supply the water for the animals and for human consumption and animal consumption. So less cattle due to less water, less cattle and other ones due to less food, and no hydroelectric power because of the falling levels means that these states, the western half of our nation, 5, 6, 7 states in particular right now, very much affected by this, they're going to need to get electricity from somewhere. Where is it going to come from? It's not going to come from windmills. There's not enough windmills in the world to put this much electricity out there. We don't have nuclear power plants right now. There's a big ban on nuclear power plants also, and so you're not going to get nuclear power. So what are you going to get? Solar power? Solar power, cannot cut it. You cannot get enough power from solar to run our nation. Just look what happened in the winter with Texas last year in the winter when they had terrible storms and everything went out and the electric went out and things like that. If you're in the winter, how are you going to... Solar power cannot run a city. You just can't do it. There's not enough of it. You have to store it in batteries. You got to do this. It's just not going to work out. And so this becomes a big problem. So where's it going to come from? Well, the West is going to want their electricity coming from the East. So eastern states that are producing power from the Niagara system and the other systems in the middle states and whatnot, they're going to be sending power across the grid to the western states. That weakens our power grid. If you don't understand how that works, it's difficult to fathom for some people. But when you're sending a lot of power through the grid, you're overloading certain circuits, you're overloading certain transformers. They can blow. Back around 10, 12 years ago, there was a transformer blew out somewhere in the Midwest. That caused the power surge to go somewhere else. That blew a transformer out. The next thing you know, the Northeast, from down in Washington, D.C. up to us, New Jersey, New York, and all that, we were in a blackout for days. And that's what happens when you overload your power grid. And that's what's going to happen as the hydroelectric power cannot be generated into electricity. We're in a very serious position. This is very, very serious. Here's number 2, okay? Number 2 I'm going to get into tonight is right here. Let me show you this. See that sign? No fuel. That's a diesel place. That's a big truck stop. And there's a sign, no fuel. We are in a serious shortage of diesel. Now, you might say, well, I don't use diesel in my car. I use gasoline. That's understandable. You're thinking that that's not going to be a problem for you, but I want you to know something. No diesel is a problem for everybody because diesel makes the nation run. And what's been happening is because of the war in Europe and because Russia has stopped shipping diesel, oil, propane, gas, natural gas They're not shipping it out. There's a shortage in Europe. So America, the good neighbor it is, of course, it's sending our diesel over there. In the last couple of months, we've been sending millions of barrels of diesel, let's say, over to Europe. In the last 2 weeks, 2 major oil companies said we're not sending diesel now anymore. Why? Because there's a serious diesel shortage here in America. Okay? And it's not just here in America. Here's another slide for you. If you recognize this, that's the bottom of England. Okay, that's England. You've got Scotland connected to that. Here in red, this is where they're running out of diesel. They're running out. This is serious. A serious problem. You see the cars lined up here? That's because they run on petrol. They run on diesel, not gasoline all the time. And so it's making a very, very big problem. It's not just in the United States and in the UK. This is happening all around the world. Here's another picture. These are people in Pakistan. Trucks, a tanker, people with jerry cans. They're online. This is hundreds of people online to get some diesel. You know why? These are farmers. These are farmers in Pakistan who are worried that they won't have diesel for their tractors, for the different things they need to do their farming. Africa is absolutely dependent on diesel. Every nation on earth is dependent on diesel because diesel makes the world go round. Okay? So with Russia not exporting, this is a serious problem. And I'm just remembering something. I don't want to forget this, so I'm going to throw this in from left field. India just announced it's not going to export food to Europe. India is not exporting food. It's actually not exporting anything to Europe because they recognize there are serious worldwide famines coming, and they're going to take care of their own. And that's what they've just done. So there's a global shortage of diesel. 25 nations in the European Union area, plus England, Scotland, Ireland, others, they're experiencing a diesel shortage. They're already experiencing it. There are no fuel signs. I just saw another sign today here in the States. North Carolina is experiencing a diesel shortage already. There's another trucker I listened to today. He said he pulled into a big diesel stop, on the highway to get diesel. No diesel. We're in trouble. Western supplies of diesel are going to be shipped to the east. They're going to put them on boats and float them around and bring them across to our area, and that's going to be how we're going to get some extra diesel. But what's going to happen with that is it's going to raise the price. Diesel is already close to $6 all across the country. Some places it's $5.50, some places it's $6. It's going to get higher. When diesel gets higher, gasoline is going to get higher because it costs more money to ship the gasoline in gasoline tankers, and they're going to pass that expense on to the consumer. We're going to see it happening. I'm just listening to some people in the industry today, gasoline and things like that, oil, all these things coming out of there. I was listening to somebody in the industry today saying July you're going to start to see a rising prices. They always rise prices of gas, but July this year, expect to see prices going a lot higher. In fact, this expert was saying gasoline may go higher than diesel is going to go, and diesel is going to go higher, $8, $9, $10 a gallon. Now, some places are experiencing a big shortage on the East Coast, and just to give you an idea of what's going on, I just want to try to take a look at the chat and see what's happening here. Jack saying this is a dangerous situation with the water. Absolutely, water is the key of life. We're 75-80% water ourselves. We have to have water. So, guys, throw a comment in if you want to. Let me know what you're thinking about this stuff here and how you feel about it. So what's happening right now? New York Harbor, the area around New York, Kennedy Airport, the Port Authority of New York, New Jersey, they should have a supply of diesel, and I might get the number wrong, but it's around 18 million barrels or something like that, gallons or whatever it is. Right now they're down around 10. So what that means is that they're about 40% lower today than they should be right now. You see, they should have a certain amount. This is the scary part. Again, I'm trying to pay attention to these things, trying to find out what's going on. Right now, we have a 3-day supply of diesel in the New York area, New York, New Jersey area. 3-day supply. I'm telling you, my son has a trucking company. My grandson and my son have a trucking company. My wife's cousin has a trucking company. They transport using dump trucks and things, working construction. And we're telling them, you guys, you got to realize diesel is getting short. There's going to be a shortage. There's going to be rationing of diesel coming up. You need to prepare and try to get these things going. In the United Kingdom, the Daily Mail, their big newspaper, is saying that starting next month, there's going to be rationing of diesel fuel going on because the Russian oil imports and the diesel fuel is not coming in. And 1/3 of all the diesel in the United Kingdom comes from Russia. It's not coming from Russia. It hasn't been coming from Russia for months. So that's why it's happening there. And the policy making that's going on is so risky. Why in the world are we shipping diesel, which we need to keep our country moving, to Europe? I feel bad for them, but guess what? We need to take care of ourselves. There's a rule when you're on an airplane and something happens and the masks come down. You don't put the mask on your neighbor first. You put the mask on yourself first. If you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anybody else. If America doesn't stay strong, it can't help anybody else stay strong either. So we need to be careful about that. Now, again, diesel. Why is diesel a problem? And how has this got to do with judgment? You'll see in a moment, okay? Every truck in America just about runs on diesel. All the buses just about run on diesel. Now, I know some of you say, well, I see buses in Newark, they're running on propane. Yeah, there's a few of them that run on propane. Yeah, there's a couple of PSD&G cars that run on propane. Yeah, it happens a little bit. It's a small percentage. Trucks and buses, tankers, and trains run on diesel, okay? If the trains don't do what they're supposed to do, then we are looking at something coming that I'm going to call Dieselgeddon. Dieselgeddon is on the way. See, the trains, the refineries, all this stuff comes out of diesel. Your trains, your tractor trailers, your shipping, your boats run on diesel. Your boats that people go out fishing with. Miguel Echeverria, one of our brothers here, has a boat. His brother's got a boat. They run on diesel, and they need that fuel. And it's not going to be around very much longer. So I really want you guys to think about how it's affecting you. Now, what's going to happen if trucks can't get diesel every day like they need? Right now, today, I'm telling you, paying attention to these things, I feel God is saying to me, you need to warn people about what's going on. I'm watching truckers today saying, I'm parking my truck. I'm a small company. I got 1 or 2 trucks. I cannot afford the price, and I can't afford to get stuck on the road without diesel. I'm parking my trucks. What's going to happen? That means that goods are not going to be delivered. Everything we get in our nation comes to us via trains. Or actually, we get all the shipments into the ports, these big, 40-foot containers and 20-foot containers with all the different goods that we get around the world and from one place to another. They all come into our ports, like in San Francisco, like in New York Harbor, the Port Authority of New Jersey. All these places, Baltimore gets them, and all these things come in. Now, those things are unloaded by vehicles that use diesel to power them, and then they're put on trains that are powered by diesel to get them out to warehouses, and then trucks who run on diesel are taking them to other warehouses and delivery places, and then trucks that run on diesel are bringing them to your supermarkets, and trucks that run on diesel are bringing you your deliveries to your house. Okay? We are going to be in a position where you're not going to get what you need. If you need things right now, if you need things, you're saying, I'll wait next week, I'll get it. You need to order it now. Because next week, it may end up where you can't get it for 2 or 3 weeks because of the diesel crisis that's going on right now. This is going to, unless something miraculous takes place, because brothers and sisters, diesel doesn't come from nowhere. You can't just open the tap in your sink and get diesel fuel out. It has to be processed from crude oil, and that's where it comes from. And it's not being shipped to us. It's not being processed in our own nation. Our own government does not let us produce what we need to produce. We were energy independent for the first time in our history a few years ago. Now we're not. We're not energy independent again. And why is this taking place? Because America's under judgment. Because America is going to start to go down. The goods and services, the trains, the trucks, The buses, the school buses. Your school buses run on diesel. What's going to happen if they only have enough diesel for school buses twice a week, 3 times a week? Well, now you're going to go back to that teleschool stuff, the computer school, things like that. The mid-Atlantic states and the Northeast up in New England are going to be hit the hardest right now. They're going to be hit first, hit the hardest. Where do you live? If you're like me, you live in the mid-Atlantic. New Jersey is a mid-Atlantic state. New York is a mid-Atlantic state. Basically, if you're in the Northeast, if you're up above it, up in New York or Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts up there, you're going to get hit very hard. Delaware, Maryland, the Virginias, the Carolinas, these are the mid-Atlantic. We're in trouble. Rising diesel prices are going to cause the prices to rise everywhere else. All you have to do is start looking and you'll see all the pricing is all gathered together. When the price of diesel goes up, the price of shipping goes up. When the price of shipping goes up, the price of your goods and services go up. Everything is all connected together. This is, my friends, this is a serious situation. Now I'm going to add something on here I didn't mention before, but I'm going to throw this out tonight. The bird flu. There's an avian bird flu. Avian bird flu is affecting, I looked at a chart today, and my best guess, I didn't add them all up completely, my best guess is that there's 45 to 50 nations around the world that are being affected by the bird flu. Right now, there are so many being affected by it. Now, last week I was telling you, they're doing these things, they're looking at the bird flu, they're looking at these things with, whoops, wrong guy. They're doing PCR tests on chickens and turkeys and things like that. There's people are being so precautionary that they're killing good stock. They're killing good stock. But there are problems that are going on, and the bird flu is taking place. So I want you to look at this picture here. See these guys? This guy's in hazmat. This guy's got the face mask on. The other guy's got the whole thing going on. Looks like one of those guys out of Star Wars. And these are chickens. These are chickens that have been slaughtered because they've got the avian flu. All right? Now, why are they slaughtered when they have the avian flu? I'm going to show you why. Here's the reason why. The reason why is because the avian flu can jump to humans. Okay? This is way back in 2006. Humans can be infected in a rare event, but now what they're saying is that this can transpire, and I'll just read this to you real quick. When birds are infected with a certain type of virus, H5N1, avian flu, it mutates rapidly and it alters the genetic material. Humans infected by close contact with live infected poultry are next. Birds carry the virus. They excrete it in their feces. When it dries, it gets pulverized and it can be inhaled or taken in by touch. And then humans have no immunity against this virus, and that is why the bird flu is so dangerous to people, and that is why they're taking drastic measures right now to destroy all these animals. They're going to destroy them because it's so dangerous. So when you look at this, okay, when you think of these things, and I just want to go back to my notes here for a second to show you this. The avian bird flu is causing, this might sound silly, but it's causing a dog food shortage. You see, a lot of dog food is made up of chicken parts and turkey parts. And because they're slaughtering hundreds of thousands and millions of birds, chickens and turkeys and whatnot, you don't have the parts to go into the dog food. So right now, I don't know if you've heard of it, but there's a dog food shortage. So if you've got a dog and you love your dog, you need to go buy extra dog food. We've been talking about having food for yourselves, keeping rice and beans and pasta and other things, canned goods on hand. If you've got a pet, you better get some dog food, okay? The supply chain issues that we've been facing for the past 2 years with the pandemic, everything that's been going on, it's not stopped yet. Shanghai is locked down still. There are hundreds of tankers and others, with these huge things. They are still out there in the harbors. In Shanghai, they're in the harbors. In San Francisco Bay, out there where the tankers come in that area, Los Angeles, San Francisco, they don't want people to see them, so they've told them go further offshore so you can't see them from land. But they're out there. There are hundreds of them out there waiting to come in. And when they come in, they need diesel-powered machinery to unload them. And then they go onto diesel-powered trains. They go onto diesel-powered trucks. And then they get delivered to us, and they get delivered to warehouses. What's going to happen if there's no diesel and your supermarkets don't get food? I said there's a 3-day supply of diesel in the Northeast right now. There's basically usually a 90-day supply of food in your big chain warehouses. Well, guess what? Your delis and your small stores, your little guys that are in your towns and in different areas of cities, they don't have a 90-day supply of food that they can draw back from the warehouse. And that's going on there. Another thing going on, I'm sure most of you have heard of it, there's a baby formula shortage. I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. There's a baby formula shortage. You see, what happened is there was a recall of baby formula from a plant that produces 40% of all the baby formula in America. And that plant was shut down because there was a threat of a bacteria that killed 2 babies. They found out that the bacteria that killed those 2 babies did not come from that plant that was shut down, but that plant that was shut down, the FDA has not let it really open up again and get into full production. So we have a baby formula shortage. This is ridiculous. It's crazy. Hey, guess what? In 2020, the warehouse, the manufacturing facility that produces 40% of chlorine for pools was blown apart by a hurricane in 2020. And guess what? They made 40% of all the chlorine for pools in America. 40% of baby formula, 40% of pool chlorine. These numbers aren't just random. And that factory has not yet been rebuilt. Why? Because of the supply chain issues, because the price of lumber, the price of building materials, they went so sky high. Well, they came down, but then you couldn't get it because everything is back ordered. And guess what else is going on? As I mentioned recently also, fertilizer. You can't get fertilizer in America. Why? Because of the problems with the trains. The companies, Union Pacific, which is run by BlackRock and Vanguard, 2 of the biggest companies in the world, who are also members of the World Economic Forum, who want to do the Great Reset, who want all the world to come on an even level. Everybody gets the same. Everybody is socialism, it's Marxism, it's communism, whatever you want to call it. It's an ism. And that's what they're doing. Folks, it's a plot. And you know who the plot's from? It's from the devil. It's his plot, and it's going to be taking place worse and worse and worse as time goes by. And that's what we're looking at. We're looking at all these different things. You know, Diane, I know you're up on these things. You've been always adding in on stuff, dog food, baby formula, gas, diesel, coins. I went to the bank the other day. We have a shortage of coins. Where did they go? Where did all the coins go to? Are you hoarding pennies? I'm not hoarding pennies. I don't know. These are just a few items. That's right. Now, I tell you, I believe America's under judgment. Personally, I'm not afraid to say it. I believe America is under judgment, and unless God, for some reason, relents and starts to turn the tide, we are going to start slipping and sliding into a third world nation status. I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember Bob Grant used to be on the radio years ago. He was the king of talk radio, Bob Grant, back in the 70s and 80s, and he said it every day. America is becoming a third world nation. And he would talk about different things. And there have been people who are speaking about this for years and years and years. Nobody's listening. They're called fanatics. They're called conspiracy theorists, things like that. I don't believe we are. I don't believe I'm a conspiracy theorist. I believe I'm a man of God. I believe I heard from God in 2019 that God spoke to me and said to me, we're in a time frame of 7 years of good that began around 2017. It's finishing at the end of 2022. In 2023, we're going into 7 years of bad timing. 2023 brings us up to 2030, which is when the World Economic Forum wants to take control of the world, where you will own nothing and you will be happy. This is not a joke. America's under judgment. I think the rest of the world is too. I think God is trying to wake everybody up. Now, judgment doesn't mean condemnation forever. Judgment means you're in trouble. You got caught. You're being punished. It's what we do to our children. When we catch them doing something they're not supposed to do, we bring them under judgment and we punish them. You take away things from them. God is taking away things, and we don't see it. People are afraid to say it. I believe that if prophets who are recognized men and women of God would start to speak what I'm speaking about, instead of telling you it's all going to get better, America's coming back stronger than ever, it's all going to turn around. They're not looking at the signs. They're not looking at the mega drought of 20 years ever since 9/11 when the droughts began. They're not looking at the diesel shortages. They're not looking at the baby formula. They're not looking at the housing crisis. They're not looking at these things. They're looking somewhere and they're saying it's all going to get better. Everything's going to be okay. You know, back in Israel, I'm going to go a few minutes extra tonight. Back in Israel, when you had a prophet like Jeremiah or Isaiah or Ezekiel, and they were prophesying judgment is coming, judgment is on those nations, judgment is coming to Israel, you know what they were told? Shut your mouth. We don't believe you. We're listening to the other prophets. They're always prophesying smooth things. But I want to tell you, it's time for the prophets to wake up and start to really get the vision of God, and not just what they want in their hearts. Now, I'm not condemning anybody. Don't take me wrong. I'm not calling anybody names. I'm not condemning anybody. This is my personal opinion. I think that some of our prophets are asleep. They're not really hearing from God right now. They're complacent where they're at, and I would love to see them wake up and start to speak out and say, America, wake up. You are under judgment, and if you don't turn around, it's going to get worse. So in the meantime, Christian, if America's under judgment, that doesn't mean that you are, because God can be with you no matter what's going on. He is your comfort in a storm. He's your shelter in a storm. He is your comfort in a time of trouble. He is the supplier of your needs. He took care of Elijah when Israel was in a 3-year famine. He took care of him in the drought, but he had to move him from the brook, then he had to bring him to the wilderness, then he had to bring him to the widow of Zarephath. Are we willing to go where God wants us to go, do what God wants us to do in order to be taken care of and provided for? God will provide your needs. Some Christians are so glib. Oh, God supplies all my needs, and through his riches in Christ Jesus in glory. But they're not examining their lives and finding out that they're short in the balance. They're not living where they should. They're not loving how they should. They're not doing some things they should. And they're just, they are in that position of false faith, saying, I'm believing God, I'm believing God. When it's all that you just want what you want. Now, I'm going to stop here because I can keep on going. I don't want to keep on going. We're being called to repentance. And some of you remember, a couple of years ago, David O'Dallas from our church went down in Washington. Hundreds and thousands of people went to Washington to pray and to seek God and to repent for America. But you know what? Our leadership has not turned around. They're bringing us deeper and deeper into debt. I'm not even talking about the dollar right now. I'm not even talking about the $30 trillion of debt that America is in, or the $40 billion package they want to send as aid to Ukraine. Where do they get the $40 billion? Does Uncle Sam have it somewhere in a special vault? No, they got to borrow it. So like they're sending our oil and diesel over to Europe, they're going to take and borrow money to send that over to Europe. We're digging a hole we're not going to get out of. Prepare. Start to put things aside if you're not doing it yet. Put aside water. Get yourself a filtering system. Get something so that if things run dry, you can get water from wherever you get it. You can filter it and make it good. A Berkey system is a great system to have. A zero water, maybe to help with certain things. Whatever you want to do, look into that. Put food away. Get food for your dog, food for your cat. Get cases. Get extra cans every time you go. Get a case, whatever you got to do, because you're going to appreciate it. And listen, let's say I'm wrong. Let's say none of this stuff happens. The best thing that will be coming out of this is that you'll be buying some stuff at a high price right now, but it won't be as high as it will be later on as inflation keeps on spiraling. Oh gosh, that's right. We are also in inflation. We are in a position of inflation where we're almost getting ready for hyperinflation or stagflation, which is even worse. Well, that's the end of it for me. I got nothing else to say. We're in trouble. America's under judgment. And if we don't watch out, it ain't going to get better. God bless you guys. Please consider supporting me on this channel and giving online.